And we're live. Yes, bouncy little green bars. That's a good thing this week. Let's hope we have them for both of us the entire show.
That would be good.
That would always be good. Welcome to the next edition of the Professional Practice Builder Society Weekly Tips and Strategies Show. My name is Chris M. Sprague, and I'm on the screen with my co-host today, Dr. Mark Cospin. Say hi to the folks, Dr. Mark.
Hello, folks.
That's a nice salute.
I'm saluting our troops in the field.
Yes, exactly. Since our next episode will come, well, technically after it'll become. Let's see.
Yeah.
Well, it'll come after Memorial Day Monday.
After Memorial Day, yes, it will.
Yes, exactly. I always get confused by that. Is Memorial Day really the 30th, or every year, or is it always on the Monday? I don't know.
It's always on the Monday.
Well, that's the holiday we celebrate. But anyway, I don't think maybe they did. Maybe everybody who's tuned in came to hear us yak about Memorial Day. It could be, but somehow I doubt it, because that's not what I put in the header of the email. It was something about understanding how to articulate a step-by-step solution. So since we only have 15 minutes for this part, and then we'll get to some Twitter suggestions in the end, I guess I'm going to shut up and we'll just jump right in. This week. I'm sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
No. Go.
I was going to say this week we're going to talk about and give you three steps to be able to understand if you can really articulate a step-by-step solution to your ideal client's problems. Remember, in the first step of the IDAP solution, you identified a problem, that you identified a set of clients' problems, and you started to whittle it down to one you'd like to work on. In the D, you defined the solution. And if you've gotten to this point, you said, okay, I see a problem my ideal client has. I've defined a solution I've got for them. So now we got to jump into the next step and see if we can articulate in a simple step-by-step way to get our clients to understand it. Before we give them the 3 points, Dr. Mark, why is it so important to articulate in a simple step-by-step way the solution you have for your client?
Well, I'd say think about it this way. I mean, you're trying to get people from point A to point B. You're trying to get them from where they are to where they want to be. In the define step, you define that outcome where they're trying to get to. Now the question becomes, it's kind of like giving somebody directions. I mean, just because I drive the same route every day to work doesn't mean that I actually know the names of the streets, right? I could just intuitively know, I know I go that way and then I go that way. So I need to actually figure out, can I articulate the step-by-step instructions in the same way that I'd have to be able to actually tell you, well, you got to go 1.5 miles and then you turn right on State Street, and then if I can't articulate that, then I've got a really big problem if I'm going to sit down to try to create a good piece of problem-solving content for my ideal audience, right? That's the issue here.
Exactly, and I'm laughing hysterically because growing up in a little rural farming community, man, I can really speak tonight.
Articulate, man, you got to articulate.
I can articulate very well. Well, that'd be enunciate, but that's besides the point. But growing up in a rural small, there we go, that's better. Rural farming community, that's kind of like redundant. You know what they're saying in the dictionary, under redundancy, redundant. But anyway, growing up in a small farming community, directions are near and dear to my heart, because I grew up in a town where I can tell you, I still don't know the names of the streets that I took every day, because it was go down to the end of this, go to the gas station, make a left, go to the library, make a right, go to the little white building, which is probably pink, purple, or brown by now, and make a U-turn. So yes, it's kind of that's a great way of thinking about it, and I didn't think about it until right now. When giving directions, then we'll get into 3 steps in a second, but when giving directions, if you live in the town and you know the lay of the land, it's easy to say, go to Mosher's farm and make a left. But if you have an out-of-towner come in and you say, look, go to this farm and make a left, and that person doesn't have a sign on their farm, there's 14 farms along the way, that person's never going to be able to understand how to get from A to B. And so it is with your ideal client. Even if your ideal client knows what you do, and maybe even might know a little bit about how you do it, they're not experts in your field. They haven't lived in your world for as long as you have. So by telling them to go, to so-and-so's farm and make a left, they might not get where you want them to go. But by saying, look, go out to the end of the road and make a right onto State Street. Well, there's going to be a street sign there, unless, of course, the kids stole it. But that's a topic for a whole nother conversation. But there's going to be a street sign there that says, okay, this is State Street. I'm going to make a left here. And that's the same way you have to be able to, to explain what you do. It's just like, as I finish up the directions example, I love going back to my hometown, and when people ask me for directions, it's like, I look and go, you really don't want me. And they're like, why don't you know? No, I know exactly where to go, but have you lived
Right.
here all your life?
I
No?
just
Okay.
can't tell you how to get there.
Yeah, that I just can't tell you how to get there. So, Mark, we came up with 3 bullet points and 3 concrete steps for our viewers to use when they want to understand if they really can articulate the solution to the problem. Because this is kind of where, can you? Yeah, I can articulate a step-by-step solution, but it goes deeper than that. Can you articulate a simple step-by-step solution? So let's give them the 3. Give them the 3 things and talk about each one for a couple of minutes of how they can understand if they really can articulate that solution or not. So what's step number 1?
Well, the first thing is to just literally write it down. Just to give the directions your own way without overthinking it too much. So you know where you're starting from, you know the problem from the I step, you know the outcome that you're trying to get them to. So you're trying to just create some language that takes me from the starting point to the ending point. And just don't even worry about whether you're making it clear, just can you do it at that level? So step 1 is just kind of put it out there on the page, even if it's full of technical language or jargon or whatever, but can you at least explain it so that you can understand? Because if you can't do that, there ain't no point in going to the second key to success here. So the first thing is just get it down, get a rough draft down.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great point, because sometimes it's funny, because I don't know if you know a lot of people like this, but I sure do, Dr. Mark. Sometimes they can sit down and physically do what you ask them to do. But if you ask them to even explain it in their own words, it's almost like, well, I almost can't tell you how I do what I do.
Sure. Yeah. Now, the classic example is, we all tie our shoelaces over and over and over again, but try to explain the step-by-step process to tying a shoelace, and suddenly you're like, wait a minute, I don't know how I do that. I mean, I'll give you some jargon. They call it implicit memory, implicit knowledge. I mean, you know how to do it. You just don't necessarily know the step-by-step because it's kind of a muscle memory at this point. Well, a lot of the expertise you have in your head is kind of like that muscle memory. You know how to do what you do all day long with your clients or your patients or your customers, but do you know how to teach somebody who's never met you how to do it? So start by just getting it out there, though. Get that rough draft down so that you're pulling it out of your head how you get from point A to point B as best you can.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because there's another famous example that's used a lot, especially in the personal growth world, which is teach somebody how to stand up. And the funny part is if you think about that, you stand up 100 times a day. You stand up even more than you tie your shoes. But if you were to have to teach somebody every muscle and every single thing that goes into actually standing up, most people, 99.999, the old Ivory commercial, 9944, 100% pure, won't be able to do it. And it's not that you're stupid. You know how to do it every single day. It's just you learned it so long ago, and now you forget, and that's okay. But if you are going to go into the business of teaching people how to stand up, you have to make sure that you can actually now articulate it to take that first step of okay, here's the first step. I can articulate in a way I can understand.
Right.
And then the second step, Dr. Mark, why don't you tell them what the second step is?
Well, the second step, we're going to take the rough draft, and you're going to now go through it and systematically remove the language that the average human being doesn't necessarily understand. Someone who's outside the bubble of your expertise, someone who's never, had this conversation before. It's almost like you're sitting there with an English to French dictionary, and you're looking up the words that just don't belong there, and you put them into normal everyday language. So try to remove the jargon and create a jargon-free version of it, and then clean it up a little bit so that it flows a little bit, but you're just putting it in plain old English.
And the interesting part about the second step here is you're putting in what you consider plain old English. Because, Dr. Mark, I think you and I both know people that think they're saying one thing, and in the end might be saying something a little bit differently, or people might be hearing something a little bit differently, and it's merely because their version of quote-unquote plain old English, whether it's life, whether it's jobs, whatever, has gotten so skewed and so out of sync that the way they're talking even though it is plain old English, it's no longer plain old English that everybody completely understands. Like I'll give the crowd an example. If you look at English, in other words, UK English versus the United States English, there are things that nobody would consider jargon, that people would consider everyday language, but end up being what they call colloquialisms or slang. But we don't look at it that way. I mean, I'll give you a great example. I was working with a potential client the other week, and I said the term umpteen years. Now, I don't think the term umpteen years is jargon at all or a colloquialism at all. It just means many years. And this person who had not grown up in the United States looked at me and went, umpteen years? What do you, even though he speaks perfect English,
Right.
and umpteen is a, kind of, but that's, that's one.
Those British people, it's like they got a different word for everything. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, they have no problem having bangers and mash for breakfast. I don't know what the heck that is. And it kind of scares me a little bit. I don't know.
Hey, Dr. Mark, this is
bangs and mashes. I don't know. That's weird.
This is still a family show, Dr. Mark. Let's not get into bangers.
It's breakfast food. That's all I know. I honestly don't even know what it is, but I know that it's something you eat for breakfast, as far as I know.
There you go.
So, but that's why we have the third key to success here, which is that you got to give your draft now to somebody else and see if it makes sense to them. So, again, you took your rough draft first time, just getting it out of your head, just trying to, articulate any which way came to you from point A to point B, from the problem in the present to the destination where the solution is achieved. Then you tried to put it into English as best you could. Now you hand it off to somebody else who's probably, hopefully about 9 years old, as the old saying goes, and see if they can understand it. Okay, they don't have to be 9 years old. You can go with a grown-up, but someone outside of the bubble of your expertise. You can't give it to your office mate who speaks the same jargon that you do, because you're going to share the same blind spots. So have somebody else read it and say, okay, does this make sense to you? Could you follow this? Would you feel confident going step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 here to get to this destination, or do I need to take it back and do another draft?
Yeah, exactly. And depending on how sensitive or confidential the information is, you might even want to create a focus group or go to one of your LinkedIn groups and say, look, I need 15 people to review a document. Tell me if it makes sense. You're not really looking for at that point, you're not looking for necessarily your ideal client. In other words, you're not trying to sell people something. If you get some of your ideal clients, that's great. But you're not necessarily looking to sell people something. You're looking for people to help you review it. And this, I guess, best way I can put it is this process I believe you can do at the beginning when you first start off trying to solve your ideal client's problems, and eventually you will get to the point where you will understand how far away from ideal English you are and non-jargon language you are, how difficult it is for you to get into just basic plain English, your lowest common denominator, and how close you can get to speaking your ideal client's language right away. So take these as 3 steps to at least start you down the path of getting better acclimated or better adjusted to speaking in less jargon and more simple English, kind of like we're going to talk about next month in greater detail, right, Dr. Mark?
Absolutely, yeah. And I just want to say also, it's not 100% about jargon either, because jargon is certainly one of the big problems that we run into a lot with folks. But the other is just, again, it goes back to that thing that intuitively how to do what you do, and so you might think there's an obvious step that has to happen between step 1 and step 2. So obvious that you don't even articulate it. You just kind of go, and then that happens. There's a famous cartoon where somebody's like drawing this really complicated math problem, and then right in the middle there's a little space in it, and the mathematician writes, and then a miracle happens, and then it continues, right? So you may just have a gap that you think is obvious that to that layperson is not obvious at all. So that may come out when you get that feedback on that draft. So don't think it's only about, okay, I did non-technical stuff. It's, does it really make sense? Can I follow it, from point A? Go back to that example of giving the directions. You might think there's an obvious step that, you forgot there's a fork in the road because you always go right, so you assume there's no distinction there. Well, that person just got lost because you were missing that critical step. So that's just what I wanted to underline there.
Yeah, and that is I hadn't thought about it that way, but that is a great point, because and to kind of wrap up the first 15 minutes, we all get caught up and especially when we're experts at things, we all get caught up in just doing. And sometimes we forget the little things because while the little things matter to success, sometimes the little things become so much of a habit that we don't think about it, like breathing. Breathing is key to you living in your success. But guess what? If you had to think about it, you die because it's a scientifically proven fact that you breathe more times than you can actually think about it. I mean, think about it sometime when you're actually sitting there doing everything and actually when your brain realizes you haven't quote unquote breathed in a while, even though you really have. In other words, you can't remember breathing. So it's the same thing with giving directions. There's things that we do on a daily basis. There's things that we do in our expertise and in our businesses that we just do, and it's something that if we're going to end up teaching people things or solving an ideal client solution, because a lot of us start off by solving our own problems first, and then we use what we've done to solve our own problems to go out and solve client problems. And if we've forgotten those little things, while they're key to our success and while we will do them, if we've forgotten to put them in a document or put them in what we teach, then the clients are going to fail. And
Right.
we're going to wonder why.
Right.
So before we move into Twitter, anything else that we missed, or do you want to summarize?
I guess
let's
just keep that little tiny summary there. So again, our 3 keys to success: write a rough draft in whatever jargon or whatever comes off the top of your head as clearly as you can. The second step then is to pull out any jargon, trying to look for those missing steps, those leaps of intuition that really need to be spelled out for the person who doesn't live in your head to know what you know, and then give it to somebody else and ask for feedback, or give it to lots of somebody else's. As Chris said, hey, the more the merrier, right? So get some feedback so that you can then go and just really make sure it's clear. So those are our 3 keys to success. If you can do that. Oh, and there's one other thing though, Chris, we really recommend that you don't go crazy and have 21 steps to this either, and we'll talk more about this next month in terms of why you want to aim for maybe 4. So try to make it a nice sized chunk of steps along the way. You can have sub steps, but we'll talk about that later.
Right, exactly. So, Dr. Mark, let's talk a little more about Twitter this week.
Why are you torturing me this way? Chris, why? I thought we were over the Twitter thing. I made my public confession last week, and now you're going to pull it out again and just kind of make me look at Twitter again.
Well, it's funny because we were going to move on and move to a different social media channel, but we got some good feedback on Twitter, and so people have asked us to give them more. And also, I had some interesting results from some of the things I was doing on Twitter over the last week that I really wanted to share with folks because it shows you how you can't please everybody all the time.
Well, all right, so let me confess again. Between last week's episode and this week's episode, I sent Zippo tweets anywhere. I did not touch Twitter for an entire week.
Okay, just make sure you transcribe Zippo in there so we put a little trademark and we'll get the SEO value of Zippo.
There you go. Good point. All right, well, we'll transcribe that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Zippo TM.
Oh, sorry, folks. For those of you who don't know search engine optimization, little inside, bad humor, old black hat joke there. But anyway, there you go. There's another thing you can put in. Man, we're getting all these SEO words. We'll get spanked by Google eventually.
Back to Twitter.
Okay, back to Twitter. So first, kind of a little bit of results. So as you all know, from last week, for the last few weeks, I've been going on this campaign to go out to people who didn't follow me back originally many moons ago when I jumped on Twitter and had nothing to say. And I've been reaching out to them, and the response, for the most part, has been incredible. I mean, I've got now New York Times best-selling authors who are following me. I've got somebody in the top 20 and top 50 of Inc. magazine or Forbes magazine, top most 50 influential people on social media. Now
you're just bragging.
Exactly. Now I'm just name dropping. But there's a reason to the braggadocious nature of these comments. So I've gotten a lot of great responses. However, there was one that I want to bring to light at this point. I won't even give the Twitter handle because I'm not going to give this particular person, I'll say, the satisfaction of getting some extra bump.
Did you run into a troll?
Well, I ran into somebody who takes a very interesting approach. So when I first reached out to this person, I said, "You've got great stuff. I follow you. I'd like you to follow me back." This person's response was kind of interesting. I keep my follow backs to a minimum. But by the way, if you want to put my handle in your tweets and talk to me, I'll be more than happy to respond. And if I like something, retweet it. And I thought that was kind of interesting. First, it was kind of arrogant because even the most popular people are following everybody back, and it's kind of there is a segment of people who don't follow anybody back, and that's actually doing, I think, their followers a disservice, because I'm going to give you guys a tip in a second on how to limit the number of tweets you get and everything.
So what's that attitude about? I'm too good to follow. I'm only followed. I am a very important person.
It's part of it. It's part of also comes a lot from the old guard, where they wanted to keep their feed down to a minimum. In other words, they didn't want to see a whole lot during a day. And the secret is Twitter's only going to show you 1,000 people's feeds anyway. So in another 2 or 3 minutes, I'll get to how to make that even simpler.
Man, I got to tell you, I feel sorry for somebody who's got the time to follow more than 1,000 feeds. But okay, that's another story.
And that's actively follow more than 1,000 feeds. So it's something that. So I think this person, my guess is, and it's funny because I don't know, this person hides behind let me put it this way. Even the name on their Twitter account isn't their real name. So they're hiding behind not only a Twitter handle, but they don't even have their real name on their Twitter account. They have kind of what they do. So in other words, it's not even like it's Ken Blanchard, or like, I'll give you an example. I mean, I follow Ken Blanchard, I follow Tony Robbins, I follow John Maxwell, I follow Donald. I think I still follow Donald Trump. I don't know why, but I think I do. I'm trying to think of the other names we can drop in here. But the whole point is, do I expect them to follow me back? I would guess that, I would be very lucky, because they each have, 20 or 30 or 50. John Maxwell might have more, but a lot of people I just mentioned have less than 100, or following less than 100 people, and I get it. There are some people who go out and, like Bill Gates. I follow Bill Gates. I think, last time, I think he's one of the ones that follows like 20 or 30 people. And my guess is his social media person is using it specifically to say, okay, there's 20 or 30 people I want to stay in contact with and focus my efforts, because, and I get it. I completely understand.
No, Chris, actually, I was having lunch with Bill the other week, and he said he hangs on every tweet that you put out, man. He's a big fan. Really.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Seriously.
I was having lunch with the Dalai Lama last week, and he said he's waiting for your next tweet.
Well, clearly, he's a big fan. I mean, we correspond regularly.
But yeah, exactly. With your magical disappearing tweets, you just said think about it.
He and I are on LinkedIn, man. We don't tweet. We just link in, man.
You're tight like that.
And we're tight like that. He's my best bud.
Exactly. So the whole point is, I mean, I do get some of the even though you got guys like Obama, who his social media team follows everybody back. I do get some people who are really, really uber famous being very careful with who they follow back, and they make be using Twitter for a business. But you know what? There's a much, much easier way to not be so, nose in the air and basically stuck up about who you follow, and that's to create lists. So in other words, you can do two things in Twitter. One, you follow people, and I'm trying to make sure that I will follow anybody back who's not a spammer and a scammer, and I'll explain at the end of this how you can kind of tell. But right now, because I'm still kind of bound by this whole Twitter ratio thing, what I've started doing is creating more and more lists. And what lists do is you don't actually have to be actively following the person, but you create a list of people that you want to see their tweets from, and you're not showing up on that person's follower list, but you are still getting a list of tweets. You can use things like Hootsuite and TweetDeck and other pieces of software to manage it and to view that particular list, or you can go into your Twitter account and just view that list. So what I recommend people do is follow everybody back who's not a spammer or a scammer, and then find people to follow in the celebrity arena that match your core values. Because when you follow somebody and somebody else follows that same person, eventually it'll be recommended that you follow each other. And that, in addition to great content, is the way you build your Twitter following. So the easiest first place to start to create a list is take companies and put them in lists. So that's what I've been doing now over the last week or so. Is every time I need to follow somebody, I take companies that I have that have been following the company, and I put them in a list because it's not going to affect their follower to following ratio. I mean, we're talking about people with hundreds of thousands of followers. I'm not hurting them by doing it, but what I am doing is opening up my Twitter feed for another slot for somebody else I can put in and actually follow and help somebody else out by increasing their, by increasing their followers. So lists are one thing. Thing number two is something that this Twitter user said to me. He's this person. I'm guessing it's a he, could be she. I really don't know at this point. But this person says to me, well, all of your tweets are thank yous and everything, and you're just trying to raise your hand to get people to notice you. Tweet great content and then worry about thanking me when I retweet it. Well, the first thing is, as far as I can tell, this person hasn't put me on a list. So unless I'm on his list, or
right, how would you know, right?
Well, there's really three ways. I have to be on a list, I have to be being followed by him, or he or she could be taking the extra effort to go and put me in a piece of software somewhere where he's following my tweets and not following me. And
so let me here's a totally ignorant Twitter user question. So
sure.
could he be finding your content simply by doing searches on Twitter? If he was searching keywords, or if he had some kind of tracking where he was there were certain topics that were of interest to him. If you were publishing on those topics, but you were neither on his list nor was he following you, would he still discover you if he searched?
Yeah, there are ways, whether it's using hashtags or whether it's including things in your tweets to show up in other people's areas. But here's the thing of it. This person
so he might actually sort of be saying, well, if you're not showing up, if I haven't discovered you through my searching, then you're not worthy of my following you, or something like that.
He could be, but and that's I'll say that's a very arrogant position to take. And
that's why I said it that way.
and here's why. It's not, my content. It's funny because I tweet 3-4 times a day. Part of it is inspirational quotes, part of it's an inspirational meme, and part of it is stuff I get through a service called Gaggle-Amp, where I signed up. Lori Ruff, one of the top 50 Forbes social media influencers, has created this Gaggle where she ends up curating some great content. Her and her LinkedIn, Rockstar family create great content, and it's one of the great ways to get other content, because let's face it, there is no real new content. I could be tweeting all day long my quote-unquote own stuff, and 98% of it would still be something that, still be another person's idea anyway. So why not get great content where you can? So I'm going out on a regular basis doing that sort of thing. And if what this person was really saying was that, look, what you're tweeting doesn't resonate with me or isn't in my area, that's fine. I keep saying 8 billion. There's 8 billion people out there. There's probably less than that, but that's okay. I'm rounding up. I'm rounding up. So the whole point is that's okay. I don't mind that there are people that don't resonate with what I'm sending out. But do me a favor, jump on and follow me for a couple of weeks to actually see what I'm tweeting, or have some overt way of seeing what I'm tweeting, and then decide if you're going to tell me I don't tweet a lot of content, And I responded back to him, and I don't ever recommend fighting in public. I responded very nicely back to him because here's the problem with Twitter. One of the problems is you cannot send somebody a direct message if they're not following you. So other than replying to him in public, I had absolutely no way of saying, look, okay, that's fine, but did you check this stuff out? So I very nicely said, look, 90%, I get what you're saying, but I do tweet 3 to 4 times a day, and what you've been seeing recently is a temporary thing, and it really is. In fact, I think today or yesterday was the last day of the massive, 4 or 5, 6 posts during a day to go out and thank people. I've gotten a few hundred more Twitter followers out of it. So from my perspective, this has worked great, because now people who had no reason to follow me at the beginning are at least giving me another shot. Now, if they go back and unfollow me, then what I'm saying isn't resonating with them, and that's fine. But at least they gave it a shot, and at least they're seeing what I'm doing, and they're making an educated decision, an educated guess, and that's in the end what you got to hope for. When you're out in Twitter engaging with people, you want to create great content, and you want to curate and send out great content and great things to at least have people give you a shot and see if what you're saying resonates with them. If they don't and they drop off your follower list, then you have two options. You either unfollow them because, because they unfollow you. And I do admit that most of the times if people unfollow me, I will fairly closely unfollow them back, only because it's at the point where right now with the whole ratio, I got to keep it even. I got to be engaged with the people who want to engage with me. I put them on a list. I've now started putting those people on a list in an effort to say, okay, I might want to follow them back, might want to follow them back in the future and see what they're doing in the future. So there's your big Twitter tip.
So there you got some good tips and strategies, and I realize we're hitting the bottom of the hour, so to kind of pull this together for folks. I mean, part of it is listening to these. You got to also then figure out where this all fits into your strategy. So clearly, Twitter plays a bigger role in Chris's social media strategy than mine. It's neither good nor bad. It's just figuring out which channels you're going to work, where you want to invest your time. But if you're going to work Twitter, listen to him, not me.
and
that's all I can say.
There you go. And to kind of and just to give you a quick wrap up. So first, what I've been doing, I say, has been a success. I've got a few hundred more Twitter followers, and now I'm understanding who will and won't. So I still recommend you go out and do it. If you've been on Twitter a while, go back out, reach out to the folks that you originally followed, give them their shot to look at you. That's the second piece, is you want to give people a shot and let them come in and see the great content you're sending out. I mean, that's really number 3, is great content. Make sure, whether it's memes, inspirational, whether it's quotes, make sure you're doing it on a regular basis, and it's great content. And number 4, if you run up against a limit or something like that in Twitter, then start creating lists so you can at least watch the company's content and you can still stay connected with them. The last one, number 5, which was kind of implied, is don't unfollow famous people just because they won't follow you. Those are the one exception to the unfollow rule, because you want to be connected with them because they are giving you great content, and also you will get more followers just by following them. And oh, by the way, here's the bonus number 6, because I mentioned it before, and now it just went out of my head. What was it again? This was I want to wrap this up, but there was the spammers and scammers. This should be common sense. But if somebody's description is, we will get you 2,000 Twitter followers for $5, they're a scammer. If they have no picture, they're a scammer. If they have a weird description, I wouldn't follow them back. The whole point is this: you want to be. It's kind of like it's guilt by association. You want to be associated with the people that you want to be associated with. That's all I got. We got one more reminder for them, and what is that, Dr. Mark? As I point to the bottom of the screen.
I can't see the bottom of the screen. Well, subscribe. Come on over. He's telling me to look at the bottom of the screen. I'm looking at the camera. Come on over to ppbsociety.com. We are going to be here next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock again. But you can subscribe and get the reminder so you don't miss out, and you get the heads up about what's coming in future episodes. So join us at ppbsociety.com, and there's a little box there to put your name and email address in, and we will help you not miss any of these things.
Exactly. And until next time.
What he said.
No, what he said.